Siddharth Yadav, spokesperson of the BJP, is joining us this evening. Anand Ranganathan, author, and C. Rajashekharan, advocate and political analyst. Namaste, Jai Hind. Thank you for your time this evening, gentlemen. Let me first ask Anand Ranganathan. Sanatan Dharma is like dengue and malaria. You're a scientist, sir. I don't know how spiritual you are, but you would have read. And please explain then.
Good evening, Anand, and good evening to my fellow panelists. It is not enough that we merely oppose Judaism. We should eradicate Judaism like we eradicate malaria and dengue and corona. Now, I ask all those psychos who are supporting Stalin Jr., is my statement above not anti-Semitic? In fact, you'd be arrested in 16 nations for saying this. But replace Judaism with Sanatan Dharma, and you not only escape arrest, you celebrate the bigotry unabashedly. Number one, Uday Stalin has uttered a shockingly anti-Hindu, anti-Hinduism statement, and his subsequent clarification is also utterly devoid of truth. Look, Anand, I do not believe in caste. No scientist can or should. In fact, I have said this before. I am a proud Ethiopian and a descendant of Lucy. And as for Varna, I am ambivalent towards it in a strictly technical sense, as long as there is free movement across the four Varnas, which there was in Sanatan Dharma to begin with. Unfortunately, with time, as Ambedkar also pointed out, Varna and caste became intertwined, and even though this was approved by Mahatma Gandhi, the so-called hereditary Varna, it is unacceptable to me. Number two, if a BJP minister had said what Stalin has about another religion, there'd be a civil war by now. But Hindus are easy to abuse. They don't behead transgressors. You see, that's the reason. But when it comes to Islam, remember how ex-Prime Minister Manmohan Singh on the floor of our parliament demanded an apology from Denmark for the Prophet cartoons. Besides, such statements are entirely in keeping, Anand, with the DMK founder's stand. Let me explain just a couple of minutes. E.V. Ramasamy or Periyar thrived on acrimony, spitefulness and rancor. He never gathered the courage like Dr. Ambedkar did to criticize the regressive, misogynistic, exclusionist and bigoted practices of religions other than Hinduism. In fact, unlike the ruthlessly objective Dr. Ambedkar, Periyar praised Abrahamic religions, wanted Hindus to convert to Islam. He was an antithesis of Ambedkar, who he, by the way, disliked and claimed to be on the payrolls of Brahmins. Anyhow, I abhor Periyar's means, but to me, he was proof of the extent to which Hindus accept diversity of opinion. The price of apostasy, Anand, in Hinduism is veneration. What is the price, I ask you, of apostasy in Islam? Yes, death. 3. Let me quote Periyar verbatim and everything would be clear. Quote, as a first step, we will burn the constitution. Then we will burn Gandhi's photo. Then we will uproot all Gandhi's statues. Brahmin is a snake entangled in our feet. If you see a snake and a Brahmin on the road, kill the Brahmin first, unquote. And as a response to such utterances, here is a quote by none other than Jawaharlal Nehru, quote, old and senile men like Periyar deserve a place more in a lunatic asylum than in public life. It is high time Periyar and his followers were banished from this land, unquote. I now quote from Reverend Robertson's authoritative book, Periyar's Critique of Hinduism, quote, in 1971, Periyar organized a conference in Salem. Rama's image was taken in the procession and was beaten by sandals. Hindu deities were obscenely portrayed. The effigy of Rama was burned. Posters revealing the lust and birth of Hindu deities were everywhere, unquote. This event also finds a mention in a chapter by Puduwal in Transcultural Negotiations and in Rayson's India Reflection. Finally, just 30 seconds. Let me mention a quote verbatim now, finally, quote. Right. Whatever Periyar says can only be said by a criminal or a lunatic. Do not delay in dealing with this matter. Let him be put in a lunatic asylum and his perverted mind treated there, unquote. Do you know who said this, Anand? Jawaharlal Nehru to K. Kamaraj on November 5, 1957. So whatever Stalin Jr. has said is entirely in keeping with his ideology. A jackfruit never falls far from its tree.
But why are they saying it right now is the bigger question. And since you quoted our scriptures and you talked about Varna, Jati and caste, caste emerges from a Portuguese name word called casta. So it is dark, it has got no Indian etymology at all or lineage in terms of our lingua franca. It was a term that was brought in by foreigners to define something they did not understand. if you look at Varna or if you look at how it is defined, even Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says it as when he says, Chatur Varna Maya Shrishta Guna Karma Vibhagasaha. That means the 4 Varnas are my creation, but it is decided on the basis of ability and action. Never is it mentioned birth, and that's why Ratnakar became Valmiki, the sage. And that is why a Vishwamitra turns around and becomes the Kaushika king becomes Rishi Vishwamitra. So these are all examples in our own scriptures, and this is the reality. If Kichaka was a Suta, so was Adhirath. So there are, and so was Shukadev Goswami, who propagated the Vyasa's Mahabharata after he learnt it from Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa and Vaishampayana. So these are all parts of our culture, our history, which we must always remember, that people rise when they follow intellectual pursuits. Siddharth Yadav, Brahma Jane iti Brahmana is what our scriptures say, that those who understand the meaning and have the knowledge of the unity of the universe and humanity or the human being, those are Brahmanas. Never is it said that it is something which is by birth. So who are these Brahmanical forces that the DMK wants to cull? Who have propagated caste amid society? There is caste only in Sanatan Dharma, sir. Is that true?
Anand, thank you so much for having me today on your show. One thing is very clear, Professor Anand very rightly put where this ideology is coming from. But this bashing of the Hindu Dharma or the Sanatan Dharma is nothing new. Sanatan Dharma, which calls for Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Badrani Pashyantu, Ma Kashit Dukh Bhagavavet, which wishes for the progress of the entire world, which dreams of a Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which dreams for a Shanti in the entire world, is now being bashed by political parties from a long time. And this is, I think, the lineage of a very particular Macaulay Marxist ideology, a thought process, which has dwelled down into political parties who, for their political gains, have unapologetically always chosen this path. This is nothing new. This is not in isolation. We have seen this from the opposition, from certain political parties, from a long time. How can we forget the education minister from Bihar? How can we forget Swami Prasad Maurya? How can we forget Gopal Italia from the Aam Aadmi Party, who came out and said कि मंदिरों में नहीं जाना चाहिए, you should not go to the temples. It hurts the feelings. And when it comes down to DMK, it is nothing new. In DMK, in Peramburu district in Tamil Nadu, where the Muslim population went up to 70%, it was decided that you cannot do puja in temples because it hurts the feelings. And the government upholded this decision. It was only until the court came up and said and overruled and said you can't do it because it's unconstitutional. But today, when not just a son of a chief minister, but a minister himself who took oath on the constitution comes out and participates in hate speech, rather propagates hate speech, participates in an event which is called eradicating Sanatan Dharma, and unapologetically comes out and says it is like a disease, and later on also clarifies, I stand by what I said and this is exactly what I said, I will eradicate it and I'm ready for anything. This is the reality of Indian politics.